Chapter 4 contains a comparison. His pleasure, he says, is the pleasure of a person with a toothache realizing that he is keeping his family awake with his moans. Moans that perhaps are those of an impostor. A complicated pleasure. But the point is that the mouse man suggests he is cheating. So, by chapter 5, we have the following situation. The mouse man is filling his life with bogus emotions because he lacks real ones. Moreover, he has no foundation, no starting point from which to proceed to an acceptance of life. He looks for a definition of himself, for a label to stick upon himself. For instance, a lazy bones or a connoisseur of wines, any kind of peg, any kind of nail. But what exactly compels him to look for a label is not divulged by Dostoyevsky. The man he depicts lives only as a maniac, as a tangle of mannerisms. Dostoyevsky's mediocre imitators, such as Sartre, a French journalist, have continued to trend today. At the beginning of chapter 7, we find a good example of Dostoyevsky's style, very well rendered by Gurney, revising Garnett. Quote, "But these are all golden dreams. Oh, tell me, who was it first announced, who was it first proclaimed that man only does nasty things because he does not know his own interests? And that if he were enlightened, if his eyes were open to his real normal interests, a man would at once cease to do nasty things, would at once become good and noble, because being enlightened and understanding his real advantage, he would see his own advantage in the good and nothing else. And we all know that not one man can consciously act against his own interests. Consequently, so to say, through necessity, he would begin doing good? Oh, the babe. Oh, the pure, innocent child. Why, in the first place, when in all these thousands of years has there been a time when man has acted only from his own interest? What is to be done with the millions of facts that bear witness that men, consciously that is, fully understand their real interests, have left them? What is to be done with the millions of facts that bear witness that men, consciously, that is, fully understanding their real interests, have left them in the background and have rushed headlong on another path to meet peril and danger, compelled to this course by nobody and by nothing, but as it were simply disliking the beaten track, and have obstinately, willfully beaten another difficult, absurd path, seeking it almost in the darkness? So I suppose this obstinacy and perversity were pleasanter to them than any advantage. The repetition of words and phrases, the intonation of obsession, the 100% banality of every word, the vulgar soapbox eloquence, mark these elements of Dostoevsky's style. Sounds like Nabokov thinks of Dostoevsky the way we think of the Beatles. She loves you, yeah, 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 she loves you, yeah. In this chapter 7, the mouse man, or his creator, hits upon a new series of ideas revolving around the term advantage. There are, he says, cases when a man's advantage must consist in his desiring certain things that are actually harmful to him. This is all double talk, of course, and just as the enjoyment of degradation and pain have not been easily explained by the mouse man, so the advantage of disadvantage will not be explained by him either. But a set of new mannerisms will be arrayed in the tantalizing approximations that occupy the next pages. What exactly is this mysterious advantage, a journalistic excursion in Dostoevsky's best manner? First takes care of civilization. Hold on. What exactly is this mysterious advantage? A journalistic excursion in Dostoevsky's best manner first takes care of civilization, which has made mankind, if not more bloodthirsty, at least more vilely, more loathsomely bloodthirsty. This is an old idea going back to Rousseau. The mouse man evokes a picture of universal prosperity in the future, a palace of crystal for all, and finally there it comes, the mysterious advantage, one's own free, unfettered choice, one's own whim, no matter how wild. The world has been beautifully rearranged, but here comes a man, a natural man, who says, it is merely my whim to destroy this beautiful world, and he destroys it. In other words, man wants not any rational advantage, but merely the fact of independent choice, no matter what it is. Even though breaking the pattern of logic, of statistics, of harmony and order. Philosophically, this is all bunkum, since harmony, happiness, presupposes and includes... Philosophically, this is all bunkum, since harmony, happiness, presupposes and includes all the presence of whim. I'm going to reread that paragraph. What exactly is this mysterious advantage? A journalistic excursion in Dostoyevsky's best manner first takes care of civilization, which has made mankind, if not more bloodthirsty, at least more vilely, more loathsomely bloodthirsty. This is an old idea going back to Rousseau. The mouse man evokes a picture of universal prosperity in the future, a palace of crystal for all. And finally, there it comes, the mysterious advantage, one's own free, unfettered choice, one's own whim, no matter how wild. The world has been beautifully rearranged, but here comes a man, a natural man, who says, it is merely my whim to destroy this beautiful world. And he destroys it. In other words, man wants not any rational advantage, but merely the fact of independent choice, no matter what it is. Even though breaking the pattern of logic, of statistics, of harmony and order. Philosophically, this is all bunkum, since harmony, happiness, presupposes and includes also the presence of whim. But the Dostoevskian man may choose something insane or stupid as harmful. But the Dostoevskian man may choose something insane or stupid or harmful, destruction and death, because it is at least his own choice. This, incidentally, is one of the reasons for Raskolnikov's killing the old woman in Crime and Punishment. In chapter 9, the mouse man goes on ranting in self-defense. The theme of destruction is taken up again. Perhaps, says he, man prefers destroying to creating. Perhaps it is not the achievement of any goal that attracts him, but the process of attaining this goal. Perhaps, says Mouse Man, man dreads to succeed. Perhaps he is fond of suffering. Perhaps suffering is the only origin of consciousness. Perhaps man, so to speak, becomes a human being with the first awareness of his awareness of pain. The palace of crystal as an ideal, as a journalistic symbol of perfect universal life and aftertime, is again projected on the screen in disgust. The narrator, in disgust, like they talked about it, not in disgust, like they're disgusted by it, is again projected on the screen in disgust. The narrator has worked himself into a state of utter exasperation, and the audience of mockers, of jeering journalists he confronts, seems to be closing in upon him. We return to one of the points made in the very beginning. It is better to be nothing. It is better to remain in one's mouse hole or rat hole. In the last chapter of part 1, he sums up the situation by suggesting that the audience he has been evoking, the phantom gentleman he has been addressing, is an attempt to create readers. And it is to this phantom audience that he will now present a series of disjointed recollections which will perhaps illustrate and explain his mentality. Wet snow is falling. Why he sees it as yellow is more emblematic than optical. He means, I suppose, yellow as implying unclean white, dingy, as he also says. A point to be noticed is that he hopes to obtain relief from writing. This closes the first part, which, I repeat, is important in its manner, not matter. Why part 2 is entitled Concerning Wet Snow is a question that can be settled only in the light of journalistic innuendos of the 1860s by writers who like symbols, allusions to illusions, that kind of thing. The symbol, perhaps, is of purity becoming damp and dingy. The motto, also a vague gesture, is a lyrical poem by Dostoyevsky's contemporary Nekrasov. The events our mouse man is going to describe in the second part go 20 years back to the 1840s. He was as gloomy then as he is now and hated his fellow men as he does now. He also hated his own self. Experiments in humiliation are mentioned. Whether he hated a fellow or not, he could not look into a person's eyes. He experimented. Could he outstare anybody? And failed. This worried him to distraction. He is a coward, he says. But for some reason or other, every decent man of our age, he says, must be a coward. What age? The 1840s or the 1860s? Historically, politically, sociologically, the two eras differed tremendously. In 1844, we were in the age of reaction, of despotism. 1864, when these notes are set down, is the age of change, of enlightenment, of great reforms as compared to the 40s. But Dostoevsky's world, despite topical allusions, is the gray world of mental illness, where nothing can change except perhaps the cut of a military uniform an unexpectedly specific detail to meet at one point. A few pages are devoted to what our mouse man calls romantics, or more correctly in English, romanticists. The modern reader cannot understand the argument unless he wades through Russian periodicals of the 50s and 60s. Dostoyevsky and the mouse man really mean sham idealists, people who can somehow combine what they call the good and the beautiful with material things, such as a bureaucratic career, etc. Slavophiles attack Westerners for setting up idols rather than ideals. All this is very vaguely and tritely expressed by our mouse man, and we need not bother about it. We learn that our mouse man furtively in solitude at night indulged in what he calls filthy vice, and apparently for this purpose he visited various obscure haunts. We recall St. Preux, the gentleman in Rousseau's Julie, who also visited a remote room in a house of sin where he kept drinking white wine under the impression it was water, and next thing found himself in the arms of what he calls une creature. This is vice as depicted in sentimental novels. The out-staring theme is then given a new twist. It becomes the out-jostling theme. Our mouse man, apparently a small, slender chap, is thrust aside by a passerby. A military man over 6 feet high. Mouse man keeps meeting him on Nevsky Avenue, which is Petersburg's 5th Avenue, and keeps telling himself that he, mouse man, will not give way, but every time he would give way, would step aside, letting the gigantic officer stalk straight past. One day, mouse man dresses up as if for a duel or funeral, and with heart going pit-a-pat tries to assert himself and not step aside, but he's flung aside like an India rubber ball by the military man. He tries again and manages to retain his balance. They run into each other full tilt, shoulder to shoulder, and pass each other on a perfectly equal footing. Mouse man is delighted. His only triumph in the tale is here. Chapter 2 starts with an account of his satirical daydreams, and then the story at last is launched. Its prologue has occupied 40 pages in Gurney's translation, counting part 1. On a certain occasion, he visits a certain Simonov, an old schoolfellow. Simonov and 2 friends are planning a farewell dinner in honor of a 4th schoolfellow, Zverkov, who is another military man in the story. His name is derived from little beast, Zveryak. This Zverkov, too, had been at school all the time I was there. I had begun to hate him, particularly in the upper grades. In the lower grades, he had simply been a pretty, playful boy whom everybody liked. I had hated him, however, even in the lower grades, just because he was a pretty and playful boy. He was always poor at his lessons and got worse and worse as he went on. However, he left with a good certificate, since he had influential people interested in him. During his last year at school, he came in for an estate of 200 serfs. And as almost all of us were poor, he took to swaggering among us. He was vulgar in the extreme, but at the same time he was a good-natured fellow. Even in his swaggering, in spite of superficial, fantastic, and sham notions of honor and dignity, all but very few of us positively groveled before Zverkov. And the more he swaggered, the more they groveled. And it was not from any interested motive that they groveled, but simply because he had been favored by gifts of nature. Moreover, it was, as it were, an accepted idea among us that Zverkov was a specialist in tact and the social graces. This last fact particularly infuriated me. I hated the abrupt, self-confident tone of his voice, his admiration of his own witticisms, which were often frightfully stupid, though he was bold in his language. I hated his handsome but stupid face, for which I would, however, have gladly exchanged my intelligent one, and the free and easy military manners and fashion in the 40s. The first of the other 2 schoolfellows is Ferfitchkin, a comedy name. He is of German abstraction, a vulgar, swaggering fellow. It should be noted that Dostoyevsky had a kind of pathological hatred of Germans, Poles, and Jews, as depicted in his writings. The other schoolfellow is yet another army officer, Trudolyubov, whose name means diligent. Dostoyevsky here and elsewhere has the 18th century comedy tendency to apply descriptive names to people. Our mouse man, who, as we know, likes to court insult, invites himself. It's settled then, the three of us. With Zverkov for the fourth, 21 rubles, at the Hotel de Paris at 5 o'clock tomorrow. Simonov, who had been asked to make the arrangements, concluded finally. How do you figure 21 rubles, I asked in some agitation, with a show of being offended. If you count me, it won't be 21, but 28 rubles. It seemed to me that to invite myself so suddenly and unexpectedly would be positively graceful, and that they would all be conquered at once and would look upon me with respect. Oh, do you want to join too? Simonov observed, with no appearance of pleasure, seeming to avoid looking at me. He knew me through and through. It infuriated me that he knew me so thoroughly. Why not? I'm an old schoolfellow of his too, I believe. And I must own I felt hurt as your having left me out, I said, boiling over again. And where were we to find you? Ferfitchkin put in rudely. You never were on good terms with Zverkov, Trudolyubov added, frowning. But I had already grabbed at the idea and would not give up. It seems to me that no one has a right to form an opinion upon that, I retorted in a shaky voice, as though something tremendous had happened. Perhaps that is just my reason for wishing it now, that I have not always been on good terms with him. Oh, there's no making you out with all these refinements, Trudolyubov jeered. We'll put your name down, Simonov decided, addressing me. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the Hotel de Paris. That night, the mouse man dreams of his school days, a generalized dream that would not do in a modern case history. Next morning, he polished his boots after his servant Apollon had cleaned them once already. Wet snow is symbolically falling in thick flakes. He arrives at the restaurant and learns that they had changed the dinner hour from 5 to 6, and nobody had troubled to inform him. Here begins the accumulation of humiliations. Finally, the three schoolfellows and Zverkov, the guest, arrive. What follows is one of the best scenes in Dostoyevsky. He had a wonderful flair for comedy mixed with tragedy. He may be termed a very wonderful humorist, with the humor always on the verge of hysterics, and people hurting each other in a wild exchange of insults. A typical Dostoyevskian row starts. Tell me, are you in a government office? Zverkov went on, being attentive to me. Seeing that I was embarrassed, he seriously thought that he ought to be friendly to me, and so to speak, cheer me up. Does he want me to throw a bottle at his head? I thought in a rage. In my novel surroundings, I was unnaturally ready to be irritated. In the inn office, I answered jerkily with my eyes on the plate. And have you a good berth? I say, what do you leave your original job? What made me was that I wanted to leave my original job, I drawled more than he, hardly able to control myself. Ferfitchkin went off into a guffaw. Simonov looked at me sarcastically. Trudolyubov left off eating and began looking at me with curiosity. Zverkov winced, but he tried not to notice anything. And the remuneration? What remuneration? I mean your salary. Why are you cross-examining me? However, I told him at once what my salary was. I turned horribly red. It's not very handsome, Zverkov observed majestically. Yes, you can't afford to dine at cafes on that, Ferfitchkin added insolently. To my thinking, it's very poor, Trudolyubov observed gravely. And how thin you have grown. How you have changed, added Zverkov, with a shade of venom in his voice, scanning me and my attire with a sort of insolent compassion. Oh, spare his blushes, cried Ferfitchkin, sniggering. My dear sir, allow me to tell you I am not blushing, I broke out at last. Do you hear? I am dining here at this cafe at my own expense, not at other people's. Note that, Mr. Ferfitchkin. What? Isn't everyone here dining at his own expense? You seem to be... Ferfitchkin turned on me, becoming as red as a lobster and looking me in the face with fury. We won't go into the act, I mimicked in answer, feeling I had gone too far. And I imagine it would be better to talk of something more intelligent. You intend to show off your intelligence, I suppose. Don't upset yourself. That would be quite out of place, Addy. Don't upset yourself. That would be quite out of place here. Why are you jabbering away like that, my good sir, eh? Have you gone out of your wits in your office? Enough, gentlemen, enough, Zverkov cried authoritatively. How stupid all this is, muttered Simonov. It really is stupid. We've met here, a party of friends, for a farewell dinner to a comrade, and you carry on a fight, said Trudolyubov, rudely addressing himself to me alone. You invited yourself to join us, so don't disturb the general harmony. No one paid any attention to me. I sat crushed and humiliated. Good heavens, these are not the people for me, I thought. And what a fool I've made of myself before them. But what's the use? I must get up at once this very minute, take my hat and simply go without a word, with contempt. The scoundrels, as though I cared about the 7 rubles. They may think, damn it, I don't care about the 7 rubles. I'll go this minute. Of course I remained. I drank sherry and Lafitte by the glassful in my discomfiture. Being unaccustomed to it, I was quickly affected. My annoyance increased as the wine went to my head. I longed all of a sudden to insult them all in a most flagrant manner and then go away, to seize the moment and show what I could do, so that they would say, he's clever, though he's absurd. And, in fact, damn them all. Why aren't you going to drink the toast? Roared Trudolyubov, losing patience and turning menacingly to me. Lieutenant Zverkov, sir, I began, let me tell you that I hate phrases, phrasemongers, and men who wear corsets. That's the first point. And there's a second one to follow it. There was a general stir. The second point is I hate loose talk and loose talkers, especially loose talkers. The third point, I love justice, truth, and honesty. I went on almost mechanically, for I was beginning to shiver with horror myself and had no idea how I had come to be talking like this. I love thought, Monsieur Zverkov. I love true comradeship, on an equal footing and not, I love, but however, why not? I'll drink your health too, Monsieur Zverkov. Seduce the Circassian girls, shoot the enemies of the fatherland, and here's to your health, Monsieur Zverkov. Zverkov got up from his seat, bowed to me, and said, I'm very much obliged to you. He was frightfully offended and had turned pale. Damn the fellow, roared Trudolyubov, bringing his fist down on the table. Well, he ought to get a punch in the nose for that, squealed Ferfitchkin. We ought to turn him out, muttered Simonov. Not a word, gentlemen, not a move, cried Zverkov, gravely checking the general indignation. I thank you all, but I am able to show him myself how much value I attach to his words. Mr. Ferfitchkin, you will give me satisfaction tomorrow for your words just now, I said aloud, turning with dignity to Ferfitchkin. A duel, you mean? Certainly, he answered, but probably I was so ridiculous as I challenged him, and it was so out of keeping with my appearance that everyone, including Ferfitchkin, was prostrate with laughter. Yes, let him alone, of course, he's quite drunk, Trudolyubov said with disgust. I was so harassed, so exhausted, that I would have cut my throat to put an end to it. I was in a fever, my hair soaked with perspiration, stuck to my forehead and temples. Zverkov, I beg your pardon, I said abruptly and resolutely. Ferfitchkin, yours too, and everyone's. I have insulted you all. Aha, duel is not in your line, old man, Ferfitchkin got out venomously through clenched teeth. It sent a sharp pang to my heart. No, it's not the duel I'm afraid of, Ferfitchkin. I'm ready to fight you tomorrow after we've reconciled. I insist upon it, in fact, and you cannot refuse. I want to show you that I'm not afraid of a duel. You'll fire first, and I'll fire into the air. They were all flushed. Their eyes were bright. They had been drinking heavily. I asked for your friendship, Zverkov. I insulted you, but insulted? You insulted me? Understand, sir, that you never, under any circumstances, could possibly insult me. And that's enough for you. Out of the way, concluded Trudolyubov. I stood there as though they had spat upon me. The party went noisily out of the room. Trudolyubov struck up some stupid song, disorder, the remains of dinner, a broken wine glass on the floor, spilt wine, cigarette ends, fumes of drink and delirium in my brain, and agonizing misery in my heart, and finally the waiter, who had seen and heard all and was looking inquisitively into my face. I'm going there, I cried. Either they'll all go down on their knees to beg my friendship, or I'll give Zverkov a slap in the face. After the great chapter 4, the Mouseman's irritation, humiliation, etc. become repetitious, and soon a false note is introduced with the appearance of the favorite figure of sentimental fiction, the noble prostitute, the fallen girl with the lofty heart. Liza, the young lady from Riga, is a literary dummy. Our Mouseman, to get some relief, starts the process of hurting and frightening a fellow creature, poor Liza, Sonia's sister. The conversations are very garrulous and very poor. But please go on to the bitter end. Perhaps some of you may like it more than I do. The story ends with our mouse man admitting the idea that humiliation and insult will purify and elevate Liza through hatred, and that perhaps exalted sufferings are better than cheap happiness. That's about all.